All right, guys, welcome back to the Buck Fever podcast. I'm Noah.
Jake?
That's Jake. And with us today, we have a special guest. You've actually been on our old podcast, and you've made a couple appearances in some of our other videos on our channel, written some articles that are up on our website. Pat Kolbe, welcome to the new podcast.
Great to be here, fellas.
Yeah.
Sweet studio.
Thank
Excited
you.
for this.
Yeah, we built the new studio with the idea of having guests in mind. We actually downsized in space quite a bit, so maybe that wasn't the best. But as far as the decor and all of the equipment goes, we've really tried to make some upgrades here to facilitate bringing on some guests. So thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, you bet. Almost
Yeah.
didn't come down tonight, but then I was like, talking deer hunting, let's go.
Yeah, I know it's always tough because it's just crazy with everybody's schedules. Everybody's busy, and so trying to make all that stuff fit together and work. But yeah, it seemed like in talking today and kind of figuring out if we were going to be able to do this or not, it was like, yeah, it'll be a good time. So yeah, this episode is going to be a lot about hunting public land, hunting on new ground, hunting out of state. Something about Kolbe is he's a very humble guy, so he's never going to claim to be the world's leading expert in anything, but he's got a lot more experience on this stuff than we do, and he's got a pretty good track record, pretty respectable. So thought we'd bring you on, and I'm sure you'll be on. You can be on as many times as you want, but for the first
Hope to be
one,
on quite a bit.
yeah,
Coming up, yeah.
I figure this would be a good place to start. We do have to apologize for anybody watching for our microphone situation. Jake and I did not cheap out and only buy 2 microphones. We actually have enough. We have 4, so we have more than enough. Just some technical difficulties, of course. That's seems to just be the way it goes. So hopefully this will be fine for now, and I'll make sure to have everything worked out for the next time. So we should all be good to go.
We get 4 wide in here someday. If we got
I
Eli
think-
up here, she could be real tight.
If we try and get all 4 of us on this couch, it's going to be tight. But
Team bonding.
we can move the table over, and then we got a little ottoman that we can set down. So somebody will
Draw
just kind of
straws
be.
for the ottoman.
Yeah. It'll probably be me. I'll probably be over there, but I can kind of be in the corner. We can maybe move the camera a little bit, get things worked out. We'll try and get 4 guys in here. Eli's welcome anytime as well. Hopefully, even if it's got to be on a Zoom call or something, we can get that all figured out, and we're excited to have him on as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So we were just talking a little bit before we started rolling here, and we had never heard the story of how you landed your first permission spot. So that's a private land permission spot that you've got.
Yep.
But that's a great story to get into to kind of start this all off.
Yeah, so we've been hunting, Eli and I have been hunting the same private land piece by permission, southwest Wisconsin, since we've been in college, which I'm 37, so it's a long time ago. I think we thought this was our 16th year hunting down there this fall. So 16 years ago, there was no Onyx, no awesome mapping software that allows you to easily find property owners and addresses and be able to pinpoint these spots really easy. So we went to, I don't know if it was the county clerk's office or something, and picked up an old school plat book and literally had to kind of star pieces of property that were in the chunk size that we wanted, and then we would have to drive the vehicle around on these roads and like from the road kind of get a glimpse of what it kind of looked like. And then if a house was nearby, we would assume that was the property owner's house, go knock on the door and ask for permission. And we did this for 2 straight 8-hour days and got told no.
Of course.
Repeatedly for 2 days straight for 8 hours. The second day, the very, very last place we had pinpointed, we were kind of debating, like, dude, we've been getting rejected for almost 16 hours straight now. Like, what do you think? The odds
Right.
of this one are probably
Yeah.
not very good. But dead end road. It's getting dark out. We decide to go, and we drive down the dead end road, park at the person's house, and I just remember they had like a lower level and a balcony up above, and we go up there, knock on the door, and the wife answers, and we give our spiel about hey, poor college kids looking just for a place to hunt. We had the routine down pretty good, but obviously it wasn't a very good sell job, right? We're not salesmen, but she didn't know. And then all of a sudden I hear the door up above from the balcony creak open, and the husband comes out on the balcony outside, and he's like, "Honey, what do these two guys want?" She's like, "Oh, honey, it's two college kids looking for a place to hunt." And he's go, "Well, hell no, they ain't hunting here. Why don't you go in and grab them 2 beers and tell them to meet me in the shed? We're going to find them a place to go." So me and Eli kind of look at each other like, all right. So like the old Dumb and Dumber quote, like, you're saying there's a chance.
Yep, right? Exactly.
So we go into this guy's shed, and we walk in, and immediately it's just like huge bucks mounted on the wall over this shed, and we're just kind of in awe. And we're sitting down talking to him for probably 30, 40 minutes, and pretty long into the conversation, he goes, "You know what, guys? This neighbor that butts up to us, I bet you he'll let you on." And as soon as he said the landowner's name, I'm like, oh my God. I was coaching high school football at the time, and this guy was the announcer for the Friday night football games, and I was up in the booth. So I had talked to him just about every game, shared, some popcorn and some hot dogs with him, and usually the conversations always revolved around football.
Right.
Never hunting.
Yeah.
I didn't know he owned 200 acres and liked to hunt and whatnot. So he's like, "Yeah, go over there. I bet you he'll let you hunt." So sure enough, we drive down there and knock on the door, and we obviously kind of knew each other just from that mutual, passing at the football games.
Yep.
And sure enough, they let us on, and we've been hunting that property for 16 years ever since, and they've become really good friends of ours, and we've stayed overnight there, shared all kinds of really good meals with them. They become good friends, almost like a second set of parents, at least in hunting season, for sure. So yeah, kind of just a crazy story.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing ever. I mean, that's always how it goes, though. With anything like that, it's always going to be some sort of crazy connection that is, a small world type situation. That's always how it seems to work out. But man, that's kind of next level. That's pretty especially like the caliber of land that he's got, and the quantity of land, and just
to be able to land that by knocking on doors.
Right.
Yep.
If you did that now, you'd probably have to knock on 200 doors before you got one yes, and who knows how even big that property would be, because everybody's doing it.
Right. And then, the fact that the guy is like, adamant that you can't hunt there, but he's still willing to help you out, and then that he lets you hunt at the neighbors. I mean, you're hunting the same deer. Like that, it's a crazy story, but obviously it's worked out, and I know you share with us it maybe wasn't the greatest in the beginning, but obviously now.
Oh, we didn't know what we were doing. If we would have the knowledge we have now, we would have killed a lot more deer. Let me tell you that. Just with wind direction and thermals and just how to hunt those hills. Eli was just kind of getting into bow hunting at that time in college, and I had hunted nothing but flat agricultural land before that. So jumping into the bluffs and hills of Southwest Wisconsin was a whole different ball game. So we kind of got our butt kicked for a while, but we're starting to figure it out.
Yeah, that's how it goes, man. I'm still getting my butt kicked, trying to figure it out and find my way. It's just kind of part of it, I guess. But so you get the permission spot, you put in some years there. You're kind of at the same time learning how to hunt and what works, not only on that property but just in general. So then eventually there comes a day where you decide, you kind of want to expand a little bit. So kind of take me through that. What's going on when you decide, maybe we should start and look for some new ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can never have too many areas to hunt, right? Eli has since, he continued to live and stay, and he lives down in Southwest Wisconsin. He lives about 40 minutes from that property, but, I moved back to the east central side of the state, and it's a 2.5-hour drive 2.5-3 hour drive every time I want to go down there. Or my hunting cabin in north central Wisconsin is 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
But not even just that, just looking for new opportunities, new challenges. We started like dabbling out and hunting some different public pieces 5-6 years ago. Part of it was just trying to find some new experiences, finding some different properties to, maybe go shoot does. And then also just our idea of, we got a nice prime piece of ground, but we both work in education, and a lot of our hunting time is limited to weekends. Well, you don't always get the best weather or the conditions that you want. So
right.
to still be able to go down there and hunt, and maybe you got to wait for the afternoon hunt to have great conditions, and you don't want to go in there in the morning, but you still want to hunt, right? So just now we can go somewhere else. Don't care about the pressure we put on it, and then save that private land piece for when the conditions are right and we can dive in. So
super nice.
Yeah.
Right. Able to do that, not blow up your whole property or waste your whole weekend. I mean, if you're driving 3 hours, you want to be able to hunt. I mean, like your situation, that's why you guys hunt mornings, because you drive 3 hours. You're not going to hunt for a night.
Right. Yeah. The property that we hunt on is like half an hour, 40 minutes from the property that you and Eli are hunting on. I think it's just more of a north and south type of thing. I think you guys are a half hour south of where we're at, so it's definitely a hike to get over that. And we saw that sometimes with turkey hunting, that when the main spot that we've got permission on isn't the greatest, sometimes you got to just branch out so that you have an opportunity to still hunt, because it's fun to hunt, but not blow out a property that you're trying to preserve.
I bet you we had some of the best hunts this year, turkey season, on public land and permission spots that we got for asking. So makes a lot of cool memories doing that.
Yeah, and we had a better track record, admittedly, getting permission spots to go turkey hunting than deer hunting. I think that's kind of...
Yeah, people are pretty protective of their deer.
Yeah, that's one of those things in Wisconsin especially. Yeah, you're going to have a hard time, especially now, this many years later. It's going to be hard trying to get a spot to deer hunt. But turkey hunting is, there's still some availability there. But yeah, I mean, options are always great. Yeah.
But I'll say this too, like once we started doing it, it was fun. It was a ton of fun to just go and dive into a place you've never been before. And now you got to try to figure it out. Through scouting, and boy, I'll tell you what, you want to expand your learning curve, or like start hunting new properties, and like all of a sudden you learn things on different properties, and you can bring that back to the private land pieces you're at. But yeah, it was fun. It was just a breath of fresh air. Not that, we're hunting a pretty prime piece of private land, but it was something new. It was a challenge. It just really added to deer season, and it became a lot of fun just jumping onto these new properties. I'm not, even if it was 2 times a year, 5 times a year, 7 sits, it was a lot of fun and a new challenge jumping on some of these new public pieces.
Oh, of course. So let's say you are you and I am me, and I'm looking to try and hunt a new public spot in 2023 here. So coming up in September, I'm looking to get on a new spot. What kind of advice would you be giving me? Where do I start?
A lot of the pieces we looked at, we would take the mindset of what is going to suck for other people. What's going to be overlooked. Big hills, if you got a park and you look up and you got to climb 300-400 feet of elevation, I guarantee you're eliminating 95% of the people.
Yeah.
If there's water and you got to put on a set of hip waders or get in a canoe, you're eliminating 95% of the people. Sometimes we have found that small pieces have very overlooked, because everyone's looking for that block of 200-400 acres of public.
Right.
But that little 18 over there, everybody drives by it because they think, it's not that good. It's just a small little piece. And we've had some pretty good luck on some small pieces. Seeing deer, not maybe necessarily harvesting them, but getting opportunities, and maybe shooting a couple does. So that's kind of where we start, is what is going to eliminate 75, 80, 90% of the people. If you got this great piece of 300 acres with all kinds of great access and flat land, I can guarantee you it's going to be loaded with other hunters. People are lazy.
Right. And that's not only good advice as far as avoiding other people, but also finding where the big bucks are going to be at and where the deer are going to be at in general, because wherever there's less pressure is where they're going to be. So it all kind of correlates. If you can go where the hunters aren't going to be, that's going to be better opportunity for you to be kind of in your own spot, and also a better chance at seeing deer and seeing big deer too.
Yeah, and maybe we didn't exactly start that way. We probably hit a bunch of those easier pieces as well, but it didn't take long to find out that, you see old soda cans or, a beer bottle over here or someone's seat cushion. You're like, yeah, there's obviously been some traffic here, or quite a bit of traffic, or, you'd see other hunters and be like, no, this isn't what we're looking for. You got to try to find those pieces that haven't been pressured a lot.
Right. So if it's summertime and you're going to be looking to go and find some new properties to hit, are you going to start out like on an app?
Yeah, we're going to start for sure on, we use Onyx. That's just our choice of what we're using. We've been using that for years, ever since it came out, and we spend a lot of time, scrolling through maps, looking for just all kinds of different pieces. And then if we have any open time, like we've spent a lot of days even in season, like, hey, if it's raining in the morning or maybe the conditions aren't right, we won't hunt and we'll drive around and go hike a new piece of public. Maybe we'll carry our bow just in case something happens, but
right.
And we'll just kind of do our scouting on those days when it's not, we don't feel it's a great day to be in a tree stand on our prime prime private piece. So
you kind of start mobile, you pick out a couple of target spots, and then go and just check them out. And I mean, obviously, you kind of have to do that. You can only learn so much from an app, even as good as they are today.
I can't tell you how many pieces that look phenomenal on a map, and then you get in there and it's just like, it's thicker than hair on a dog, or it's swampy, wet, like just brutal, or what you thought was a nice like oak savanna is not, or just even from Minnesota this year, when I was there, I had picked out a spot and it was in some pines, and I got in there, and I'll tell you what, I just remember getting to a point, I'm like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And then I looked down and I had about 2 million burrs on my pants, the real kick in the nuts. It took me about, I don't know, a couple hours to pick all those off. Like right there, when I looked down and I saw about the million burrs, I'm like, yeah, this is not the place I expected it to be when I had zeroed in on Onyx and said, that's where I'm going to go sit this morning.
I'm ready to quit if I get like 3 birds on my sleeve. I'm like, yep, that's it, I'm done.
Just ruins your day.
Yep.
The worst is I didn't even realize it until I like had looked down and I saw my pants, and then I looked like any exit route out of where I was like, it didn't pay to start picking them off, because there was going to be about 2 million more coming on the walk out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it
was brutal.
That's the worst.
So when you're going into these public land spots, what's your setup looking like? Like, what kind of tree stand? Are you sitting on the ground, or what are you rocking?
So we've been rocking climbers. I know, the big thing now is the saddles and the hang and hunt. Maybe I'm just cheap, but I I have a Hawk climber. Eli runs a Summit. He's been running Summits for years and he loves it. I absolutely love the comfort you get in a climber. Once you are up there set in a tree, you can sit in those things all day long. I mean, you can fall asleep, take a nap. They are comfortable. It's not this small, I'm a big dude, like it's not this small little platform I have to sit all day on. They are heavier, but I don't mind lugging it around. I mean, for me, it's usually climber or on the ground, and I got no problem now sitting on the ground either, especially if it's like your first or second time in and you're just trying to figure the area out. I've spent too many days dragging my climber in and never actually going up in a tree. I just sit on the ground and kind of want to see what the area has to offer, and then I end up, by the end of the day, I look down at my Onyx track and I've walked 5 miles with a climber on my back and have never even gone up a tree.
Yeah, Jake and I have talked a little bit about like, is it worth investing in a saddle? And then even on private land, if you just have that saddle, you could hunt a different tree even in the same area every single day. So theoretically, you could use a food plot as an example, but let's say you have a circular food plot, you could theoretically hunt it in any wind condition because you got a saddle. You just pick whichever tree you want that day for whatever the wind is going to look like, and then just go with that. So I mean, is it worth it to maybe switch over to something like that even on private? Is that something, you obviously have the equipment already for it? Is that something you ever do on private? just take your climber in and,
Oh,
and
for
set
sure.
up in a spot?
Yep, for sure. I mean, we've got all of our permanent sets that are, pre-hung. We do all that in the summer. But what happens when you go up there and you're sitting a spot, and then the trail that you thought in July or August that comes 20 yards from your stand, all of a sudden they're using that trail that's 60 yards away.
Yeah.
Well, like, instead of tearing down that whole set that is actually in a pretty good spot, this just might not be the year, you can jump over there with your mobile set, whether that's a climber or saddle or hang and hunt hang on. So yeah, we do that a lot.
So you'd say there's a significant advantage in having the ability to at least be somewhat mobile, even on private ground?
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be. Like, why continue to sit the same stand and watch deer 60 yards away, continue to use the same path, and then go, they just didn't come close enough. Like, be aggressive, get over there. That's where they're traveling right now. And
yeah.
We've really taken that approach the last couple of years.
Right. So what are, looking at, you obviously have a fair amount of experience on private ground, but then also plenty of experience on public ground. What are some of the similarities and differences between the two? Just for somebody looking to, get into it, it's like, is there something you need to watch out for, maybe you wouldn't think of on public ground that's different than being on private?
Well, with public, you can't hunt public the same way you do private, in terms of if you're in any private that has ag and you're used to sitting field edges, like, field edges on public are just not usually going to work.
Okay.
You got to dive in there a little bit further. I mean, that's what the average Joe that's going out on public is doing. He's trying to hunt it the same way they hunt their private, and they're sitting on field edges. And it's great that you can see 400 yards, but I don't just want to see deer. You want to get the goal, right, is to get close enough to kill them. So you got to sometimes be a lot more aggressive and dive in there. I would say we're probably not as aggressive on our private ground because you have the luxury of when you can go in there and save spots. Public, you're probably being more aggressive, right? Like, not that you don't care if you blow it up, but if you're only there for 2 days and it's not yours, like, you technically kind of don't care if you blow it up. Like, you want to be aggressive and put yourself in the best spot. Whereas if it's the private ground and I know I got another 4 weekends ahead to be able to hunt it, I'm going to be a little bit more passive and maybe not jump into my best spots if the conditions aren't right. But if I'm going to Minnesota for the weekend, or any other state for that matter, if I know I got 4 days, like, I got to make it happen in 4 days. So I'm going to be more aggressive in what I'm doing. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So maybe more aggressive on public, especially if you're on more of a time constraint, and then, kind of dealing with the pressure of other hunters, I guess, would be something, even if you hunt in a permission spot or on private ground that you own where other people are hunting, it's a little bit easier to sort of figure out where other people are going to be hunting and that communication and stuff. So, how do you deal with other people? Because even if you find that spot that 95% of guys aren't going to be going to, I'm sure inevitably you're going to run into other people out there.
Yep. It's more in your mindset. Like, you got to go into this public land deal expecting to see other people and not let that ruin your hunt or be so bummed out. Like, you can't get into a spot and think that you're just going to have it to yourself, Yeah. And then when you see someone, be like, well, today is screwed. This sucks. I better get out of here. Like, you got to go in expecting and knowing to see other people and being okay with it.
Yeah.
It might ruin your hunt for that day, but you might have to climb down and you might have to go over a couple 100 yards and adjust. That's just, if you have that mindset going into the day, it doesn't, put you in a state of mind where it ends up ruining your hunt.
Yeah.
It's part of the ball game on public, and they've got every right to be there as you. Is it frustrating? Yeah. But, I can recall one time it was raining and we were on a piece of public southwest Wisconsin, and we got in there an hour before light and, thought it was going to be the cat's meow of a spot, and, didn't see anything the first hour. And here 8 o'clock comes and I see a guy come, it's raining. He comes up and sets 75 yards away from me, starts cutting branches down, pulls out a blue tarp and makes a covering over this ground blind he made with this blue tarp and sets up 75 yards away. And I'm like, Okay, now this is one of these instances.
Okay.
I climb down and tuck my tail and go back to the truck. But
I mean, isn't it, to begin with, isn't it illegal to cut stuff down on public land, or is it
oh
not?
yeah, I believe so. But
And then the blue tarp, and yeah, that's
Kind of backtracking a little bit about the climber. I've never really used one, but is it hard to find trees with no limbs to get like high enough up there?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, that's the real downfall with climbers. You got to have the perfectly straight tree, and it can limit not only what tree you can be in a specific area, but also sometimes like what height you can get to. Where you're like,
right.
Dang it, if I could only be like 5 more feet high.
Yeah.
Or but sometimes you just got to give what is there, and if you can only get 12, 14 feet off the ground,
Yeah.
That's what you go with. I think a lot of times we like to be 20, 22, 25 feet up in the climbers. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So do you have any notable stories of any interactions with people in public? I know that can be something, if you're new to hunting public, that you're like, well, I don't know. I don't really want to try to run into anybody because I don't know if they're going to be upset or what I would say. Do you have any sort of interactions like that? How do those usually go?
Every person I've ran into on public land's been awesome. They've been great. I've had no bad interactions with people. Most people are super friendly. Sometimes you exchange some information, talk about where you've been in the area. Sometimes if you see guys at the parking lot, I like to say, hey, where are you going? I don't want to screw up your hunt. Here's where I'm thinking about going. I'd rather give that information out and try not to mess up both of our hunts.
Right.
Than be a dick and not talk to the guy and just barge in there or something. So, because even if I'm walking to a spot and someone beat me there, well, I'm not going to go ripping past the guy. I'm going to alter my plans and go somewhere else. And again, it's just mindset. Don't let that ruin your hunt.
Right.
Don't let that ruin your day before it even started. It's part of what you expect when you're going to public.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because I know even on our property, it's a little bit smaller, and on our property we'll hunt 150, 200 yards as the crow flies from each other, and then on public, the mindset is always like, well, I'm going to be right on top of that guy if I'm a couple hundred yards. On private land, you're willing to do that and not think anything bad of it, but then on public land, you expect to have your own, half a square mile block all to yourself. It just doesn't usually work out that way.
I remember one year up at our cabin, it was early season, and these bucks were so dialed into these specific acorn trees. Me and my brother sat 44 yards apart with the bows. Yeah.
Man.
Did it work?
Yeah, he shot and missed one. And then there were three bucks in there. There was a really big one, a 13-pointer, and then this 8-pointer. He shot at the 13. I thought he hit it, and the 8-pointer ran by me, and I drew back on it, and I'm like, I really don't want to shoot this deer, but it would be super awesome to double up with my brother on the same day. And I didn't shoot, and then I called him on the radio, and I'm like, did you get him? And he missed him.
Mm.
And just to finish that story, I was coaching football at that time, and I had to be back for a Sunday night coaches meeting, and my brother was down in the dumps, and he wanted to go home too. I'm like, get your freaking rear end back in that same tree stand. Those bucks are going to be back in there tonight eating acorns.
Right.
I'm driving home at 2:30, and he calls me. He's like, dude, I shot that same 13-pointer.
No way.
Shot him that afternoon at 2:30. And it was like 80 degrees out.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. What month was that in, did you say?
What's that?
What time of year was that?
It was like opening weekend.
2:30.
Really?
He's in
2:30 in the afternoon, 80 degrees.
5 hours before it closes.
Yep.
Man, that's something kind of like what we were talking about last week. Sometimes if you can just get on them, just go do it, Sometimes opening weekend,
if you can stand the heat and bugs.
Yeah, and you just know where they're going to be, just go do it. And sometimes it just works out like that. That's a crazy story. That's always how it goes. Just like we were saying earlier. It's just always something like that.
It's not how you think it's going
to
be.
No. How many times is it, the 25-degree perfect northwest wind in your perfect set at
right
8 o'clock, buck chases. There's probably a million stories like that, but it's usually never the perfect scenario.
No.
It's all these weird times, especially with these big bucks,
Mm-hmm.
I've killed one buck in November. With the bow, at least.
The best time of year.
Yeah, all of them have been opening day.
Mm-hmm.
I've never. I mean, I've had a few hunts where like you think it's gonna be perfect and you see some deer, but nothing like you. Everybody talks about the rut.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, they're gonna be flying all over, and I've
Yeah.
really never had that yet.
You're more of a late October guy, though, aren't you, Kolbe? Like Halloween.
No, recently, I guess. I had never killed a buck in October, period, until 2020, and then I shot one on Halloween, and then this last year was October 29th.
Oh yeah, so it's just kind of recently getting.
Just recently, yeah.
getting
Otherwise,
October luck.
most of them November or within the first 2 weeks of the season.
That's more like Jake.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
I,
what
I love early season.
Yeah,
Favorite time, by far.
early season better than late season.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Early season over the rut.
I think
Oh,
if you
wow.
have a permission spot like you and I do, where you can pattern deer and know where they're gonna be, it's a lot. Early season's just as good as the rut, in my opinion, for that.
Yeah.
I think it's better.
They're not spooked. They're gullible. They don't know what's going on, and
So you think it's better because of having more of a pattern on them? They're not going to be as crazy running around, or
Yeah, they're bed to food, and it's a pretty simple equation. They're bedding, and they're going somewhere to eat, and go sit between that. You know,
yeah,
if you having a general idea where they're going to bed and where they're going to eat, either get on the edge of the food source or get between the food source and the bedding, and hope they're coming on the right trail.
right.
But you get to that rut period, you just don't know. I mean, a camera picture from an hour before you get into your tree means almost nothing, because that
Yeah.
buck could be on the complete opposite side of the property within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Well,
just don't know where they're at. I mean,
right.
it's a fun time of year to hunt. Some magical stuff happens, right? You see some really cool stuff when you get these bucks dogging these does, or big groups of bucks running through the woods. It's an awesome time to be in the woods. But give me early season. Give me the first 2 weeks of the season.
Well, because even this year, you
Okay.
guys saw a ton early season. Eli shot one early season, and then they were more on a pattern. You kind of had them figured out a little bit, and then the rut comes along, and you shoot one, maybe technically
pre-rut,
pre-rut,
yeah.
kind of on the edge there, but that was another just like sporadic. He just rattled, and then 5 minutes later, there he was on a string right to your tree. So it definitely makes sense, like that early season, just being a little bit more predictable, having a little bit of a simpler equation, like you said. But
Yep.
obviously, both times can be
And-
fantastic.
And this is completely side note, but give me early season in 75 degrees. I'd rather like wear one layer and sweat a little bit, and maybe deal with swatting a few bugs, but running a thermocell usually takes care of that. I would rather do that than freaking bundle up in 6 layers and freeze your ass off, and
100%.
then just be shivering and be like, oh, I got to make it another 3 hours. Like
100%.
early season, it's like, all right, I know I got to be in the tree by like 2-3 o'clock. I'm gonna sit till 7. You get in there early. You really don't expect that early movement, but all right, you settle in. You're amped up because the season is just starting. You're expecting to see deer.
Yep.
You're gonna know kind of the direction they're gonna be coming from, and it's just, I really enjoy that.
I know.
I'd agree.
Give me that warm weather all day long. I
Late-
hate being cold.
lately that's kind of been the pattern for us too. I mean, I shot that one 2 years ago, and then this year's second season, I had one of our shooters come out with like 20 minutes left of daylight.
Uh-huh.
Second weekend, he's just out there eating beans.
Uh-huh.
They just, I mean, they're patternable, way more patternable. They're not spooked or anything. And I was always worried about the whole sweat thing because I sweat a ton. And when I shot that buck, I was just drenched.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely drenched in
Yeah.
sweat. And I'm like, I am not seeing a single deer the whole night. And it all ended well, but
Right.
Sometimes that's the drag of the rut, though, is like, oh, here we go. We got to get on my 7 layers again, my big boots. Or usually I don't layer up that way when I'm going to the tree, but it's like jam-pack the backpack full with as many layers as I can so that when I do get to the tree, I can put them on, and it's just like,
And for us, like you said, when you get to the rut, I can really only hunt weekends. So sometimes you're kind of looking at the calendar and you're like, this might be it. Like you get to a certain point during the rut where you realize, okay, the pressure's kind of on. I'm running out of weekends here. And then you're sitting in the tree and things aren't going well. You're not seeing anything, or your cameras sort of start to fall off a little bit. And I think mentally that can be really tough. Whereas early season, if things aren't going very well, it's like, okay, it's a long season. We got a lot of time left.
Yep.
But during the rut, it can be tough too, just like
well, then
mentally.
the rut, you open up your phone and you take one scroll through social media and you're like, geez,
Yep.
everyone in the world's killing a giant.
Everyone.
What's wrong with me? What
Yeah.
am I doing? I'm not even seeing deer. So.
Exactly. No, I agree that early season it can be great. We gave some credit to the late season in the last episode too. Like you can kind of get back on the patterns a little bit. Everything that they lose throughout October into November, once you get back into December, they kind of pick up their patterns a little bit again, and you can kind of get back to that simple equation a little bit more. But
Go fill your freezers.
right,
Yeah, but a lot of times those best late season days are the coldest days.
yes.
And again, now we're back
Yeah.
to the whole thing, like, do you want to hunt in 10 degrees or do you want to hunt in 75?
Yeah, and mentally, like you're kind of more at that point, especially if you're hunting with a gun. It's going to be antlerless only. You're just not. It's not the excitement of the early season.
It's a long season too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 3.5 months by then. You can
We've
hunt,
been
and
grinding
Right.
for a long time.
Yeah.
most of us are hunting every weekend. And it's like, jeez.
Mhm. So, obviously, you've had a lot of success on your permission spots and done some other scouting within the state, but especially in recent years, you've kind of ventured out and done some more out-of-state hunting as well. So I would assume that that's kind of going to be similar to finding new ground within the state, but I'm guessing it's more of a bigger undertaking trying to get on public or get on permission spots in a whole other state.
Yeah, we started, I'd say 5 years ago was the first time I went out of state. I went to Minnesota. Me and my buddy Brad, we went for their gun season and got our butts kicked. I think we went for 3 days. We drove back across the state with our tail tucked between our legs. We got our butts kicked. But you have to, like, looking back, I got back home and I could not wait to go again.
Yep.
I'm one of my personality is like, if something kicks my butt, that just motivates me more to like go back and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I could not wait like for the next season to go back over there, and I think you just have to expect that, whether it's your first time dabbling in some new public in your home state or if you're going to go somewhere else. Like, unless you've got all kinds of time and resources to like travel over there in the summer and do a bunch of scouting and hang some cameras and do all this and that, like, we were just going in blind. Like, all these properties was our first time ever stepping foot in them. So we're just trying to learn as we go. But I'll tell you what, like, now that I'm 5 years in, I have probably more spots in that state than I have in Wisconsin that I can go to, because we've just been on so many different pieces. And every time you're on a new piece, you learn. It's just getting out of the whole thing. If you want to be successful on public land or out of state, you just need to get out of your comfort zone and realize you're going to fail and be okay with it, and realize like you're going to learn so much from all these failures. And that's just kind of what it's all about. Like, you got to take your bumps and lumps and bruises in order to succeed. It's kind of just like anything in life, right? But then every year we started going back. Like, I went back in 2019, got my butt kicked again. Well, no, I did a little bit better, but and then 2020 I shot 2 bucks over there. So,
And I don't want to hijack anything you're saying here or anything, but like one of the points that you kind of touched on a little bit there is just time. Like, sometimes it takes time. You might get your butt kicked the first time you go to a new spot or a new state. Jake and I had the same thing happen when we went turkey hunting in Nebraska. We tried a new spot, and we learned a lot, and some things went well and some things didn't go so well. I mean, the first day we had a guy almost try and kill us on the road, which was crazy.
5 minutes after being there.
Yeah, literally going to the first time, heading off to the woods, got our camo on, we're heading off, and this guy, I don't know if he was tweaking or what was happening, but we're driving down the road, all of a sudden he's coming into our lane, and then he goes past our lane and goes off the side of the road, and Jake somehow avoided him, dodged him, hit the brakes, got out of there, and then we just watched the guy, so he goes over into our lane, and then he hits the gravel, and then must have realized that he was not in his spot anymore, and then he didn't like jerk the wheel back. I could just see him in the rear view. He just calmly went back there. He's like, okay, back to my spot. But anyways, that's not only a good lesson for hunting, but also in life, whether it's a new job or something if you're trying to learn something new or do something new, like, sometimes it just takes some time. And if you keep putting in the work and the effort over enough time, good things are going to come out of that.
Absolutely.
So I think we need to go back to Nebraska.
Yeah.
year.
I think we need to spend 5 to 6 years in Nebraska. maybe we can kill a turkey. Even if we hit one with your car, I would take it. That'd be totally fine with me. No, but anyway, so you're looking at a different state. What's your approach when it comes to where you're gonna stay? Let's say you got no connections in that state. You don't know anybody over there. What's your approach when it comes to lodging?
So this is maybe has more to do with your scenario. If you would have asked me that question when I was your guys' age and I'm 21 or 22 in college, I probably would have been pitching a tent in the nearest campground because I didn't have the money to do it. Now that I'm a little bit older and a little bit more financially stable, we have looked to rent out VRBOs or Airbnbs or just find a cheap hotel. Roughing it's fine, but I still at the end of the day enjoy coming back, being able to take a shower, eat a warm meal with the guys. And we've gone with groups of guys, like whether it's a buddy or a group of 3 or whatever, and that helps offset the cost as well. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to incriminate us at all, but one of our favorite parts of hunting in Nebraska was coming back and hitting the hot tub. It was some cold mornings, maybe it got a little bit rainy, maybe some dew on the ground, and it was pretty legit coming back and having a stable place. So do you think, I mean, if you can afford it, is it worth, even if it's just a cheap hotel, like, is it worth having 4 walls and kind of a place to come back to?
It's all your level of comfort with that. There's a lot of guys out there that do the whole camp out of the back of their truck or just get a cheap campsite at a campground. There's nothing wrong with that. If, a lot of guys are successful doing that. I don't know. I just would prefer to go back for something with 4 walls. That's just
right.
me.
Well, we ran into those guys in Nebraska that were from Iowa.
Yep.
And they were pitching tents, and it was like 28. It got down to like the 20s in May, which was kind of weird. But they were like, yeah, it's some cold mornings. But, I mean,
weren't they on like day 10 or 11?
Yeah, I mean, they were out there for a long time, and they were having fun, but that's a long day. I give them credit. But
and I could see it for some people. I think for me mentally, that would just be a challenge to, like, especially if you're not successful out there, and then like just coming back and only being in a tent, and then things are cold and wet, and I think
it's a great reset and a
right.
rejuvenator to come back, grab a shower, make something at the house to eat or grill out, and just kind of have that little deer camp mentality, or
a nice bed to sleep in.
Right. Nice bed to sleep in. Getting some. You're already going on minimal sleep, so having a decent bed to sleep in is
yeah. So
nice.
I suppose, if you're going out west on an elk hunt or something, you're somewhere super remote, you're in Alaska or something. It's a different story. But if you're just, hunting public land for whitetails or for turkeys, you don't feel like it puts you at a disadvantage at all to be coming out of the woods and getting into a nice stable spot for the night?
No, actually, going back to 2020, gas was so cheap, right? It was under $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
I was actually staying back in Wisconsin at Eli's and driving like an hour and a half to go hunt. So waking up at 3:30 a.m. to go drive an hour and a half across the border and go hunt, and then an hour and a half back at night. But
which honestly isn't the worst. Like, if we go to hunt at Jake's and we're not staying over, it's an hour 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
which is doable.
It's doable. That's not the worst.
The nights are a little rough when you're driving back, but
yeah, that's true. Especially if you're going to go like back-to-back days and you're not going to stay over there. But so then when it comes to finding spots, scouting, you're pretty much going like the same sort of strategy as if it's in-state. Is there anything different you're doing being in a new spot like that?
Nope, just trying to, Minnesota's so similar to Wisconsin, so we're just trying to mimic things we do in our own state, and depending on the terrain we're hunting. I mean, we've hunted all kinds of different terrain over there, from the bluffs to river bottoms to egg country, and we luckily do the same thing a lot in Wisconsin, so we kind of know what we like or what we prefer to look for in those areas, and we just try to mimic it and do the same thing over there.
So when it comes to like rules and regulations, when it comes to buying tags, is there anything that you've run into out of state that is different, that's weird?
Not really. The only weird thing for me was when the first time I went to buy my license, they didn't accept credit cards, so you had to have cash, and I didn't have like the $200 cash in me, so I had to go find an ATM.
That's crazy.
It was cash only.
So that was like at an in-person spot, like at a Fleet Farm or something.
Yeah. It was like a gas station. But.
Which is crazy because now you do everything online. I never go and get anything in person.
I remember like when I was little, my dad going and taking us to
the
Fleet
big
Farm.
green tags.
You could go anywhere around here, right? And then you get the tags.
You got to sign them and everything.
Yeah, it was actually kind of fun. It was nice. It was like, okay, I get my big tag and I get to wear it, and
But I mean, there was a lot of homework ahead of time, like going through and like vigorously reading the regulations and making sure you're on top of everything. That's the last thing you want to do is go over to a different state and not be doing something
right
by the
because
law.
That is something like even.
And some states have some goofy stuff from what I've heard. So just make sure don't show up and expect to read the regs that night. Like do some homework ahead of time.
Right. I think you take it for granted sometimes. Like just living in a state, you kind of know what you can and can't do. You grew up doing that, and you don't always think about it ahead of time. Like a different state might have different rules, and Wisconsin and Minnesota is pretty similar, but Wisconsin to another state could be completely different, or any state to any other state could be completely different.
Well, even when we were in Nebraska, I mean, we were hunting those like 13,000 acre chunks of public, and it's like, we can drive on these things. Like in Wisconsin, you really can't do that. But we're driving all the way. There's a road that goes all the way through them, and it's crazy.
There was an app to download to show us like where all the roads were.
Yeah, that's right. Because we didn't want to go in there. We're like, are we gonna get in trouble? Can we do this? And
yeah, so there's definitely some of that stuff. It's just a good general thing because. I mean, it all depends on who you might run into and what the warden, what kind of mood. But if you come across somebody in the DNR, they don't have to just let you off with a warning because you're an out-of-state hunter and didn't read. Like, if they want to, pin you down and make you pay the fines and, like, teach you a lesson, they have every right to do so.
I would say their expectation, if you're out there, that you know what you're doing.
Right.
So that's your responsibility as a hunter to know what's going on. Just
thinking, I'm out of state, I'll just tell them, that's not necessarily just going to get you off with a warning. You might get pinched a little bit for that. And in being able to be an ethical hunter, too, I think part of that is reading the rules and regulations for the state. I think it goes beyond just taking good shots and taking care of the game and eating all the meat and all of that stuff. I think even just reading through the rules and regulations, even if they're all the same, just knowing what you're supposed to be doing, I think is part of being an ethical hunter. I think we all have that responsibility, no matter what state you're hunting in. So is there anything that would be different about hunting out of state, like stuff? What is your packing routine going to look like? Is it similar to when you're in the same state? Is it a little bit different? Is there other stuff to bring?
That's about the same. I don't really do anything different, I don't think.
Okay. Do you bring doubles a lot of things? Farther away from home in case something breaks? Or
no, you just double check or triple check and quadruple check and make sure you have it because, there's no getting it back if you're 4, 5, 6 hours away.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we always have a little saying. There's a Tyson's by where we hunt, so that's like a Fleet Farm type of store, and we always say, there's nothing we can't buy at Tyson's, but that's not the greatest mentality to have if you're going to be like going out of state, going to a new place somewhere you've never been before. You kind of want to be a little bit more prepared like that. It's one thing if you're like, oh shoot, I got to go buy some hand warmers or something. You can get those most places, but some of that other stuff you kind of, especially if it's expensive stuff that's more of a necessity, like if you forget your climber, you can make do with that, but it's probably gonna put a damper on some of your plans that you've made.
I'd say one thing I always am packing for sure is like just the extra portable charger. Like a lot of times, especially when we're going out of state, like we're hunting all day. Like when we leave the house in the morning, we don't expect to see each other or come back until it's dark. And that doesn't mean we like sit in the same tree stand all day long. But like when we go out on a piece of property, we might hunt the morning there and realize it's not good, get down, and then now we're scouting and hunting at the same time, trying to find a new spot, set up somewhere different for the afternoon. Or maybe we leave that piece of property, go back to the truck, but we're driving to another one then. We're not going back stopping for lunch and doing those things. Like, we are committed to hunting the whole day.
Yeah.
So sometimes more or less it's making sure you got everything in the truck
Right.
that you need,
True.
not that you brought it into the
Right.
your rental or whatever.
Yeah, it's one thing to bring it with, but then to also bring it with when you're actually out there is a whole other thing.
So, but getting back to that, the phone charger thing, just, we're heavily relying on Onyx maps for property boundaries and stuff, or just being able to communicate with the group of guys that you have hunting, even if we're on the same property or different properties whatsoever, just making sure guys got in and out safe, or they're set up and nothing happened to them, or maybe they shoot a deer and they need some help. Like, you gotta be able to communicate with each other. You can't have your phone die.
Right. I think even if you're one of
halfway
those,
through the day.
yeah, if you're a purist of some sort, and you're like, wow, you can't be on your phone during the day when you're out there. You have to have a way to communicate with people in an emergency. You have to have a way to relay to your group if you shoot one, so you can get some help. Like, you gotta have your phone, you gotta have a way to communicate, and you gotta have some backup to make sure that battery's gonna stay. 'Cause especially if you have an older phone, or even if it's brand new but it gets really cold, those batteries can drain.
Some of these
real
places
fast.
are pretty remote. You just don't get reception, so it just sucks the life
And
out
it's
of
just
them.
trying to find
And
it.
it's trying to find it, and your battery you can just watch it go down.
Mm-hmm.
So just having that backup. So
100%.
just like maps to get back out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Get turned around in there and
Yeah.
Right, you gotta have it. So I don't want to do this to you. I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but you had some public land hunting experience this past year, and we gotta talk about it because
Sure.
there was some stuff that went down, and it did not make it on the channel, and that's probably for a reason, because we didn't seal the deal here. But I mean, you had some pretty great stories of some near misses on some public land this year.
We had a heck of a time in Minnesota. 3 of us went over there for gun season, and more than 4 shots, but 4 deer were shot at, 4 bucks were shot at, and 0 were successfully hit, including yours truly with 2 of them. So, yeah, it just, again, going back to getting out of the comfort zone thing, that's like a big theme of mine when you're going on this public land stuff, right? Is just like, you got to be willing to do stuff other people aren't willing to do, and then more so like get out of your own way and be willing to do it. So this piece I had looked at before or driven by multiple times, and had actually seen some good bucks in it the very, very first year we were down there driving by, but there was a 20 or 30 foot wide river or creek, whatever you want to call it, separating the road and the land. And the only thing I could think of at the time was like, well, we don't have a canoe, we don't have a floaty, whatever. And we actually ended up going, and after I had shot my buck in October in Wisconsin this year, we drove over and did a little road just scouting Minnesota, and we actually stopped at this spot, and I can't remember if Eli stripped down to his underwear or whatever, but he walked in the creek to see how deep it actually was, and we figured out we could make it if we had waders. So this season came, and we brought the waders, and it's not comfortable, like putting waders on and having water coming up just up above your waist, and it's flowing pretty good, and you're trying to carry and not drop your gun. You got a backpack on, and you're got your regular boots and stuff strapped to your backpack and everything. Not comfortable, but that's what it took to get across to access the land. So that's what we did. And I had, to make this story even longer, I decided I had originally packed my other boots and pants on my backpack, and then, that's too heavy, I'll just wear the waders the whole time. I get across the creek, and then 3/4 of a mile later, I might as well have just jumped in the creek. I might as well just swam across. I was so drenched in sweat. It was like noon, and I remember peeling the waders off, and just still, like, my pants were drenched in from sweating so bad, hiking like almost a mile in these waders.
Also, real quick, another boot pro tip that Jake and I learned on some public land this year. It's maybe something that could be pretty obvious to anybody else out there, but it took us a little bit of time to think of it. There was a creek we had to cross, and I had, I had mud boots on, like rubber boots, waterproof, and Jake didn't.
cowboy boots
Right? So
don't do well.
The cowboy boots weren't gonna make it. So we were both trying to cross. Just cross one guy in the boots, take the boots off, throw him back over, and let the next guy cross in the boots. It might be obvious to some people out there, but it took us like 10 minutes to think of that. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, like, what if I just walk across and I'll take my boots off, get on like some dry leaves or something, throw them back to you, and then you can put them on and walk across. So that's another good pro tip. If you have a boot fiasco or a waiter fiasco or only one guy's got something.
Or just both wear them.
It would help.
Yeah, that might help.
That would help. That's a good start. But we didn't know there was going to be water encounters, whatever. So, anyways, back to
So back to this story. I'll try to make it a little quick. I was kind of dabbling.
No,
off
it's
there.
all good. It's all good.
So I get set up, and I'm just sitting on the ground, elevated on a hill overlooking this brushy bottom, marshy bottom, a bunch of brush and stuff and tag holders and stuff like that. And early in the morning, I had actually seen a pretty good buck just for a glimpse, and I lost him back in the brush. A little while later, all of a sudden, boom, he's like at this little pond drinking water about 110 yards away. By the time I get the gun up on him, he's gone back behind the cattails. I'm like, son of a gun. Well, never saw him again the rest of the day, and Eli was hunting a couple hundred, half mile down, whatever. He ends up coming over, and we kind of meet each other just for kind of a midday break, just kind of re-strategize about what's going on. And I'm like, that buck is in there yet. Like, I never saw him leave. I feel like I had a vantage point from where I was sitting up on this hill that I would have seen him leave that area if he did. And I said, we should really, like, probably move down 40 yards in case he comes back to take a drink of water. So we finally did. And we're both sitting there just kind of shooting the fat and watching the Packers get beat by the Lions at that time on our phone. I mean, how pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And not really being ready whatsoever. All of a sudden, out of that thick stuff comes blasting a doe. And she comes around and goes right through that water he was drinking at earlier and goes flying up basically right past where I was originally sitting. And I'm like, oh. You know what? Instead of like being smart and like, hey, get the gun, doe came flying out of there probably because a buck was chasing her out. We just continue to like nonchalantly sit there. Well, a minute later, here he comes blasting out of there. He's got like cattails in his rack, at least 150 class. We're scrambling. I got my muzzle loader. I think he tried to actually scramble and get some camera footage, but he's got a shotgun. And I get the muzzle loader up, and he curls around, and he's standing right in the same dang water spot that he was sitting in earlier. And man, I thought I had it on him. I just rushed the shot. You know, it was one of those things where like you knew the doe had just gone through, and you're just waiting for him to blast and take off at any second. And what I needed to do was just take that extra 1 or 2 seconds, take a deep breath, and get a better squeeze off on the trigger. Well, you know, squeezing off, he immediately kind of flips around and goes right back where he came from. And Eli must have pulled up his shotgun and tried to do a Texas heart shot or something, but it obviously didn't work. So there was that one. It stings a little bit, but just an awesome encounter, awesome opportunity. Again, me and him were sitting together and had we're just kind of looking at each other like, did that just really happen? And like, I wasn't even that upset that I like blew the shot. Like, yeah, you're a little irritated, but you're like, holy cow, first time we've ever been on this piece, something that we thought was going to be really good. We put waders on to get over here, and it actually came to fruition. Fast forward, that was Sunday. Fast forward to Monday, and this is where the old group of 3 swings and misses 3 times. Eli can tell the story later on a different podcast, but he took a swing at one that he said was bigger than mine. He said it was probably in the 160 class, missed.
Jeez.
My buddy Mike was up. He swung and missed at about a 120, just out in the cornfield. He was like climbing his tree stand with a climber, and he said he normally leaves his gun on the ground, and for whatever reason, I think he had seen a buck coming across the field or something earlier, so he like was climbing the stand with the gun, and he was only like 6 feet off the ground, and here it came back across the field, and he had like a 80 or 100 yard crack at it, but he was using a muzzle loader too, and he missed. And then I was sitting in a brand new piece of property I'd never been in. This is the one with the million burrs or whatever. A couple hours later, this is like 1 in the afternoon after I've completely vacated Burr City. and found a new spot. I was actually ready to climb down. I think I had disconnected stuff on my climber, and I was just about ready to go down, and I, up above the hill, heard ch-ch-ch-ch. I'm like, son of a gun, here comes a pretty good buck. And he gets, I don't know, 75 yards up above me right in the clearing, and I squeeze the trigger, and my muzzleloader, like, doesn't go off. It is like a second delay.
Yep.
My fault for not, I had cleaned the barrel, but I did not clean, like, the breech plug and stuff. And it had that second delay, and I'm sure within that second delay, I kind of went like, what? And then it fired off and whiff. So there it was. All of us 0 for 3 on Monday.
And how big was that last one?
Probably in like the 120, 125 class, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's a tough day. But like you said,
You're on deer.
It's very encouraging to be on deer and know that you did your due diligence finding the spot, and then also bringing the waders and putting in the work and getting there. There's obviously some, at least a little bit of a reward in knowing that, even though it didn't work. But also with a muzzleloader, we haven't hunted with a muzzleloader very much, but that it's a different animal hunting with a muzzleloader, because like you said,
I really like shooting that gun. I don't know.
But you can have stuff like that, and if you don't practice with it a lot, like, you know, I don't know how I would react. I don't think I've ever even shot a muzzleloader, so I wouldn't know. I know that it can happen when you shoot, that it doesn't go off right away, but
it's not like a rifle where it's
right. It's just
instantaneously.
Yeah. So there's some credit on that. But so what's the deal with that in Minnesota? Is that just like the first weekend is like?
It's the counties or the management units we're in. We're in the southern half of the state.
Okay.
And that is like shotgun or muzzleloader only. I do believe they have some rifle seasons, but it's more northern half of the state.
See, right there, that's a regulation that you wouldn't necessarily think you're doing anything wrong by having a rifle out there, but if you don't do your homework and figure that all out, so. But I mean, other than that, we can't just talk about that, because you had a good season. Otherwise, you shot a couple bucks. You got to give yourself a little bit of credit here.
I had a heck of a time in Minnesota. I consider that a huge success. Like, I didn't come back with anything in the back of the truck, but I mean, to have 2 opportunities on 2 bucks, both of them were brand new pieces of property we had never been into before. In fact, all 4 of them bucks were on properties and tree stands and spots none of us had ever sat before. So
that's pretty crazy.
Gives us a lot of confidence that like we're pinpointing the right things, looking for the right things, getting ourselves in the right spot. And I don't know. It's a lot of fun. It really is. I saw some cool stuff. I mean, even earlier that Monday, the day 2 of miss for me, I had, before that buck, earlier in the morning, had ventured out onto a ridge point and had a small buck chase a doe down a ridge, all the way up the other ridge, and then back down again, straight below me, like at the very, very bottom of the gully. And that doe came, I was sitting on the ground, and she came sprinting up to the point, and she was like stopped 8 yards away from me and had no clue I was there, and her tongue's hanging out, and she's turning around, and you can just see like the look in her eyes, like that she's getting dogged by this little. It was awesome to just be on the ground 8 yards away. She has no clue.
Right.
Tongue's hanging out. You can just see the breath coming out of her that she's breathing, and then to see this little like 3-pointer come up. Same deal. His eyes are bulging out of his head. He has no clue what planet he's on. He's just, all he thinks about is tail right now, you know. And he comes to the same spot 8 yards away, looks at me, and I swear to God, I probably could have swung around, put the gun on him, and he wouldn't have cared, because all he cared about was that doe.
Yeah.
But just to have that encounter like right next to you, super cool. A lot of good memories from that trip, and just a great time.
In the Wisconsin gun season, you obviously saw a lot of deer. You got to sit with Eli a little bit.
Yeah. Wisconsin gun season was great. Got to sit with Eli. He came up to our cabin. We sat together in one of our redneck soft-sided blinds we got sitting 10 feet up in the air. My brother from Georgia was up. So we had a full deer camp for like the first time in, I don't know, 15 years probably.
That's pretty cool.
Where all of us were there. So shot just a solid standard Clark County 8-point, I think I said, that's exactly what it was on opening day at, I don't know, what was that, like 12:30, 1 o'clock, I think, something like that. So.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's Wisconsin gun season. It's more about the camaraderie and having the whole atmosphere of, deer camp and all of that.
Everybody's up there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more about that than it is about the trophy. I feel like that's kind of come back around too in recent years. I notice we talked about social media earlier and some of the posting that goes on and all that. I noticed this year more so like people being very congratulatory of guys who didn't shoot a 150-inch deer but just shot a nice 8-pointer and got to share the memories with brothers and dads and all of that stuff like that. It was kind of more about that recently.
Yep. Good to see some of that.
That's good stuff, because especially with bow season, it can be a lot more like, I don't want to say trophy hunting, but obviously like trying to hunt the biggest deer, and social media can sort of perpetuate that a little bit, where it's like, you know, you could find people out there who will yell at you for shooting anything less than a 150 or anything less than what they think the deer is age-wise or whatever. So to be able to have that for gun season is also pretty cool.
So it was some stuff you're saying there. You know why Minnesota was so, or just going out of state for me is so fun, and why it's just so energizing and fun to me is there's no expectation.
Right.
We don't run any trail cameras. I don't have like, oh, I've been following this 160 all summer and I'm holding out for that one. We don't have any pattern on any buck. We don't have any expectation of what we're going to see. We know there's some quality deer over there, but we're going out there to hunt, to have fun, and then whatever comes by and you get a little excited about, like, you're ready to, you're out there to.
That's just the cherry on top.
Put one down. Yeah, it's a cherry on top. So that's been really kind of like I said, energizing versus like, you're hunting your private piece, and that's fun and great and all, but like so much more of it has become, well, what's your target deer? What's your hit list? And if it's not on that, then, who cares or whatever. But or you got to get them to such and such an age class. Whereas we're going over there, and again, there's no expectation. Who cares what you shoot?
Right. And then earlier this year, a bit of a nicer buck on your permission spot, like we talked about, rattling him in, what was that, 9 in the morning, I think?
9 o'clock, yep.
And that was also sitting with Eli, which is pretty cool. Anytime you can sit with your buddy like that.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Every shot I fired this year, he was sitting next to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So he was there to film the bull buck in Wisconsin. He was sitting with me for the swing and a miss in Minnesota, and then was sitting with me for the gun buck in Wisconsin. Sounds like we need to sit together more often.
I guess so.
Apparently.
That's the formula. And so that one was all, I got a lot of footage on that one. That one was good. So that's a video that's out on our YouTube channel. You can watch that. And then the gun season one, Eli did get a little bit of footage. I know at first it was like, I don't know if he got any, but you can see the deer that you shot. It's just like, he's running through and it's in like the top corner. Yeah. It's not perfect, but all things considered, considering the situation and him just kind of running through and taking a quick shot at him when he stops for a second.
That was a Chinese fire drill.
Yeah.
We were sitting in opposite spots, and I finally figured out, I was like, why were we sitting? And I finally remembered remember that day it was so windy? It was super cold, and it was blowing like 40 miles an hour.
I was in a tree stand, not in
I was sitting on the left, and the wind was coming from the west, and I had to take a piss. So you're not going to pee out that window into a 40-mile-an-hour wind. So we had switched so I could pee out that window of the blind. And then we just happened to sit back down in those chairs. And, of course, that's when something would happen, right? When you're doing something different. You've only been sitting there for 6 hours and nothing has happened.
Wouldn't be a good story otherwise.
Right? So then it was... and we also kind of talk about, like, why didn't we just switch the guns? Like, why did we have to go back to our original spot?
Yeah.
But we just did, and... That's how it went.
That's funny. Yeah, but that's one of my favorite videos. Probably my favorite from this season. Just having the two of you guys in there, it made for some funny moments in the blind, and you guys saw a lot of deer. And putting that one together was fun because it had your buck in there, and then also Eli's buck, and some more footage of the actual shot and lead up on his. But just when you put it all together, it really showed the Wisconsin gun season, the times you guys had, and it was all pretty cool. That was one of my favorite videos from this year. So
we kind of laugh about one of the concerns Eli had expressed in that video was, are we going to have enough teepee to make it through the day?
Yes.
Which is like, if you would spend any time hunting with me or him, you kind of know that's a regular occurrence at some point. And I'm happy to report there was not a slab of teepee that had to be used that day. We made it the entire day with no
way.
nature walks
I know
of the stand. So
I remember that too. Now you say, yeah, he was talking about.
I don't even know how you guys stood up that day. I was so cold I didn't even get up at all. It was just horrible.
hey, it was cold.
I was sitting in a tree stand the whole day.
Yeah, I know.
No heater, no walls.
I didn't
no
have a
roof.
heater. I had a little wall, but
Did you have your heated bodysuit?
I did.
Yeah, that's
But it was
a heater.
horrible. I had no cell service. I was just stuck down there.
I'm just up there in my tree, and
Well, on the video, my face compared to Eli's is like beet
Yes.
red. And my skin kind of naturally gets that way. But I'm taking the wind the whole time, sitting on the left from the west through the window, and he's sitting over here just fine.
You can tell just looking at it
Yeah.
how cold it is. That came through on the camera. And I upgraded my gear this year. You know, I got some good First Light stuff, and it was great. But there's not much you can
There's
do in
not
those
much when it gets
conditions.
that cold,
Like
no.
you can't put enough on. That's why the early season's so great. Everybody says you can't take enough off, but I'd rather be sweating out there than dealing with those conditions. That was miserable. That was so bad. So bad. But then again, it's, you know, days like that you remember, and then the stories that come about from that make it all worth it. And that's
Absolutely.
why we do what we do.
Yep.
For the stories like that and the memories like that, and being able to share it with one of your closest friends, it's a good time.
It was.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today. It's getting a little bit late here, and I'm sure, you know, you're welcome anytime. So I'm sure you'll be back.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. Can't wait to do more.
Yeah.
So
And-
always up for talking deer.
It was a little bit of a rookie amateur hour here with the two mics. It just, you know, we didn't get
Figured
things
it out.
set up ahead of time. We made it work, but next time, I promise we will have it all fully professionally set up. We'll get all the independent mics going. We'll get it down, and you know, hopefully we can get Eli on too at some point, whether it's on a Zoom call or in person. He can share his side of the story and impart some of his wisdom. So, anything else you got for us? Any closing words?
No, just same thing I was said a couple times. Get out of your comfort zone. Don't just go to the same box blind that sits over a food plot. Don't just hunt that 15 times a year. Go do something different. If you haven't been having success or just looking for a new challenge or something to do, like, get out of your comfort zone and go do something different. Whether it's, you know, buying a climber and just being mobile on your own property, checking out a piece of public close to you so it gives you another option. Go knock on a few doors. Like, what's the worst thing they're going to say? No, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then just go. When you do these new experiences, expect to fail and be okay with it, because that's the only way you're going to learn. Realize you're going to have to take some lumps along the way in order to have success. So,
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Well, thanks a lot for being on, Kolbe.
You bet.
It was a ton
Thanks
of
for
fun.
having me.
We'll look forward to having you on again soon. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember, you can find our podcast. You can watch it on our YouTube channel, Buck Fever Outdoors. And it's available to listen pretty much anywhere you get our podcasts. I know a couple episodes ago we talked about everywhere that it's up. We got it up on a couple more spots now. If you're looking for it somewhere and you can't find it, let us know, and we'll see what we can do about getting it up there. But it should pretty much be available to listen anywhere. Anything you can do as far as rating goes, I know on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it's a huge deal. If you like the show and you want to see us have more guests on and keep doing this, if you can give us those good reviews, that really helps us out a ton. And on YouTube, obviously, hitting the like button, leaving comments, subscribing to the channel, it's kind of what makes our world go round and keeps us in business, keeps us doing what we love, and we love doing this stuff and bringing these podcasts out for you guys. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening. Kolbe, thank you for being on here today.
You betcha.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.